Before we dive into the chilling depths of a story so dark it might just keep you awake at night, I have a small favor to ask. If you find yourself captivated by the suspense, if your heart races with every twist and turn, and if you crave more tales that push the boundaries of fear, then please consider hitting that subscribe button and ringing the notification bell. Your support means the world and allows me to bring more spine-tingling narratives to life. Now, brace yourselves, for the shadows of Willow Creek are about to awaken. The scent of pine and damp earth usually brought a sense of peace to Willow Creek, a quaint, picturesque town nestled deep in the heart of rural Oregon. Its charm lay in its stillness, its unhurried pace, and the comforting predictability of its seasons. But on that crisp autumn morning, the usual tranquility was shattered, replaced by a silence far more sinister than any scream. Detective Isabella Izzy Rossi, a woman whose sharp intellect was often masked by a quiet demeanor and a perpetual weary sigh, stood at the edge of the crime scene, the red and white tape flapping like a warning flag against the biting wind. Izzy had come to Willow Creek 2 years prior, fleeing the ghosts of a particularly gruesome urban case that had gnawed at her soul. The promise of quiet, of routine traffic stops and the occasional lost cat, had been a siren song she couldn't resist. Now, the past she thought she'd escaped seemed to be clawing its way back, manifest in the still, pale form before her. The victim, a vibrant young woman named Sarah Jenkins, lay motionless beneath the skeletal branches of an ancient oak, its gnarled roots resembling skeletal fingers clutching at the soil. Sarah, known for her sunny disposition, her cascade of fiery red hair, and her whimsical oil paintings that adorned the walls of the local coffee shop, had been an embodiment of Willow Creek's innocent spirit. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared blankly at the indifferent sky, reflecting a terrifying last moment no one could ever imagine happening in their sleepy haven. What was truly disturbing wasn't just the sheer brutality of the act, the meticulous, almost ritualistic arrangement of her body, the single, pristine white lily placed delicately on her chest, but the chilling absence of struggle, the profound sense of calculated artistry in her demise. There were no torn clothes, no scuffed shoes, no marks on the ground to suggest a fight for life. It was as if the killer hadn't just taken a life, but had painted a macabre masterpiece, posing their subject with grotesque reverence. Willow Creek had never seen anything like it. Its innocence was bleeding out, slowly, painfully, into the cold, unforgiving earth. Any initial thoughts, Izzy? Sheriff Ben Carter's voice was rough, edged with a disbelief he couldn't quite hide. Ben, a man whose face was etched with years of sun and small-town worries, had been sheriff for 20 years. He knew every resident, every hidden trail, every family secret. This was beyond his scope, beyond Willow Creek's understanding. Izzy knelt, careful not to disturb anything, her eyes sweeping over every detail. Too clean, Ben. Way too clean. No defensive wounds, no struggle. Whoever did this, they were either known to her or they took her completely by surprise, or she wasn't alive when she got here. She pointed to the undisturbed leaves around Sarah's feet. See? Not a single leaf out of place from a scuffle. And the lily. Always the lily. Dr. Eleanor Vance, the county's forensic pathologist, a woman whose sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude made her an invaluable asset, nodded grimly. She was already at work, meticulously documenting the scene. Preliminary suggests strangulation. Izzy. Precise, powerful, and quick. No signs of sexual assault, which is unusual for this kind of display. Unusual or a message? Izzy murmured, standing up, her gaze fixed on the lily. A signature. The first few days were a blur of interviews, the town's residents oscillating between shock and outrage. Sarah's parents, the Jenkins, were inconsolable, their grief a raw, public wound. Friends spoke of Sarah's kind nature, her infectious laugh, her dreams of opening an art gallery. No enemies, no shady connections, just a vibrant young woman, extinguished without a trace of motive. Mark Davies, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, was an immediate suspect. He had a history of possessiveness, and they'd had a particularly nasty public breakup a few months prior. But Mark, a burly mechanic with grease perpetually under his fingernails, had a rock-solid alibi, confirmed by multiple witnesses at a poker game in a neighboring town. He broke down in Izzy's office, his tears genuine, his anger at the killer palpable. Another lead led them to Silas Thorne, a reclusive old man who lived in a dilapidated cabin on the outskirts of town, often muttering to himself and collecting strange trinkets from the woods. He was Willow Creek's resident boogeyman, the subject of campfire stories for generations of children. Izzy and Ben paid him a visit, finding him harmless, if a bit eccentric. He spoke of spirits and ancient trees, but his hands, gnarled with age and arthritis, couldn't have committed such a precise act of violence. The autopsy report from Dr. Vance confirmed Izzy's initial suspicions. Time of death puts it between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Cause of death, as suspected, manual strangulation. No defensive wounds. Izzy, none. And here's the kicker. I found traces of a sedative in her system. Just enough to render her unconscious, but not enough to kill her on its own. She was incapacitated before the attack. So, no struggle because she was already out cold, Izzy said, tapping her pen on a notepad. That explains the clean scene. And the lily. Any significance there? Dr. Vance shrugged. Symbolism varies. Purity, beauty, death, sympathy. Could be anything. But it's deliberate. This killer isn't just dumping a body. They're making a statement. The news of Sarah Jenkins' murder spread through Willow Creek like a creeping fog, suffocating its peaceful atmosphere. Shopkeepers pulled their shades down earlier. Children were kept indoors. Neighbors who had once waved cheerfully now eyed each other with suspicion, wondering who among them harbored such darkness. Sheriff Carter, usually calm and composed, began to show the strain, his once hearty laugh replaced by nervous coughs. The local paper, the Willow Creek Gazette, usually filled with bake sale announcements and high school football scores, now ran grim headlines that screamed of terror. Izzy felt a chilling familiarity. The meticulousness, the cold calculation, the signature, it all echoed fragments of the urban case that had driven her to this quiet town. A case of a killer who reveled in presentation, who treated his victims not as people, but as props in his sick narrative. She pushed the memory away, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Couldn't be. This was Willow Creek. Then, just as the initial wave of panic began to subside, lulling the town into a false sense of security, the unimaginable happened again. 2 weeks after Sarah Jenkins' body was found, the quiet was shattered once more. This time, the victim was Michael Thompson, a popular high school football star, known for his infectious grin and his dreams of a college scholarship. His body was discovered by a pair of hikers near the old covered bridge, a local landmark beloved for its rustic charm and whispered legends. Izzy arrived at the scene, her heart sinking even before she saw him. The same chilling tableau. Michael lay on his back, his strong, athletic body posed with an almost delicate precision. His eyes, like Sarah's, stared blankly into the overcast sky, and on his chest, a single, pristine white lily. "God damn it," Sheriff Carter whispered, his face pale and drawn. "Not again." Izzy knelt, a grim certainty settling over her. The lack of struggle, the identical signature. It was no longer a random act or a lone, desperate crime. This was a pattern. This was a serial killer, methodical and terrifying, operating in their small, unsuspecting town. The fear in Willow Creek wasn't a creeping fog anymore. It was a screaming gale. Schools closed early, parents refusing to send their children. Stores, already struggling, became ghost towns. The national media, initially dismissing Willow Creek as a local oddity, descended with a vengeance, their cameras and microphones thrust into the faces of terrified residents. Willow Creek, once a symbol of idyllic Americana, was now a chilling headline, a breeding ground for unspeakable horror. Izzy felt a surge of cold resolve. This wasn't just a case. It was a declaration of war on everything this town stood for. She knew with absolute certainty that the killer was local or deeply familiar with Willow Creek. This wasn't some drifter passing through. This was someone who understood the town's rhythm, its hidden nooks, its fragile sense of community. Someone who was now, perhaps, watching them, enjoying the terror they had sown. The whispers of Willow Creek had turned into screams, and Izzy knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning. The serpent had found its way into their garden, and its shadow was only just beginning to fall. The serpent's shadow had indeed fallen, long and cold, across Willow Creek. The double murder had transformed the town from a place of quiet comfort into a crucible of fear and paranoia. Every glance exchanged between neighbors held a flicker of suspicion. Every rustle in the autumn leaves sounded like a lurking predator. The local diner, once the bustling hub of morning gossip, now hummed with hushed, anxious whispers. Izzy and Sheriff Carter found themselves under immense pressure. State police had arrived, a wave of professional uniforms and sophisticated equipment, but also a subtle air of condescension towards the small-town department. Detective Reynolds, a sharp-edged, ambitious detective from the State Major Crimes Unit, took over the lead, much to Carter's thinly veiled resentment and Izzy's quiet amusement. Reynolds, with his slicked-back hair and designer suits, clearly saw Willow Creek as a backwater, and its police force as amateurs. 2 victims, Detective Rossi, Reynolds had stated, tapping a pen against a pristine file. Sarah Jenkins, Michael Thompson. No direct connection established, beyond geographical proximity and the obvious method and signature. What's your theory locally? Izzy bristled slightly at the implied doubt but kept her voice even. The signature is too precise, Reynolds. The sedative, the lack of struggle, the lily, the posing. This isn't random. This killer isn't just taking lives. They're making a statement. And they're meticulous. Almost artistic. Artistic, Reynolds scoffed. More like a psychopath with a fetish for lilies. We're looking for a lone wolf, likely male, probably mid-20s to late 40s, with a history of isolation or antisocial behavior. Someone who knows the local area well enough to move unseen. While Reynolds focused on the psychological profile, Izzy delved deeper into the victims' lives, searching for any hidden connections, any shared threads that weren't immediately apparent. Sarah Jenkins, the artist, and Michael Thompson, the athlete. On the surface, 2 entirely different individuals. Yet, they shared a commonality. They were both symbols of Willow Creek's youth, its future, its vibrant energy. Was the killer targeting hope? Dr. Vance's latest autopsy reports offered little new evidence, but confirmed the chilling consistency. Both victims had been sedated with the same substance, a potent tranquilizer, not readily available over the counter. This suggested the killer had access to medical supplies, or perhaps worked in a field where such drugs were common. A veterinarian, a nurse, a pharmacist, a researcher? The list was long and terrifyingly diverse in a town of 5,000. Izzy spent long nights poring over maps of Willow Creek, marking the locations of the bodies, the victims' homes, their frequented spots. She noticed a subtle pattern. Both crime scenes were in areas of natural beauty, slightly secluded, but well known to locals. The ancient oak where Sarah was found, the covered bridge where Michael lay, both were picturesque spots, almost postcard-worthy. It fueled her theory that the killer was not just familiar with Willow Creek, but had a twisted appreciation for its aesthetic. Sheriff Carter, meanwhile, was grappling with the town's growing fear. Anonymous tips flooded the station, most of them baseless accusations fueled by suspicion. He even had to deal with angry mobs forming outside the station, demanding answers, demanding justice. He looked 10 years older in 2 weeks. "I've never seen anything like this, Izzy," he confessed one evening, running a hand over his thinning hair. "This town is tearing itself apart. Everyone's a suspect. Everyone's terrified." Izzy understood. She remembered the faces from her old case, the way trust had eroded, leaving behind only fear and bitterness. She wouldn't let that happen here. She refused. Her breakthrough came not from grand forensics, but from a mundane detail. While reviewing Sarah Jenkins' social media, Izzy noticed a series of old photographs. One, in particular, caught her eye. A group photo from a high school art club trip to a local nature preserve, taken 5 years ago. Sarah was in it, laughing. and standing a few feet away, awkwardly at the edge of the frame, was a younger Michael Thompson, then a freshman visiting a friend in the club. Ben Reynolds. Izzy called, excitement thrumming through her. They did know each other. Not closely, but they were at the same event. And it was at the Willow Creek Nature Preserve. It's a connection, however slight. Reynolds scoffed again. A high school field trip? 5 years ago? Detective Rossi, that's a stretch. Lots of people go to the nature preserve. But it's a connection, Izzy insisted, undeterred. It shows they moved in vaguely overlapping circles. What if the killer targets people who were at a specific place at a specific time? Maybe it's not about who they are, but where they were or what they represented at that moment. She began to dig into the nature preserve's archives. Old visitor logs, event schedules, even local news articles from that specific period. It was a painstaking, almost desperate search. The nature preserve was a popular spot. Thousands of people visited over the years. Days turned into nights, fueled by stale coffee and a growing sense of urgency. The town was a powder keg, and Izzy felt the clock ticking. The media had dubbed the killer the Willow Creek Weaver, for the way they seemed to weave victims into their macabre tapestry. Then, the third body was discovered. This time, the victim was Martha Gable, a beloved retired schoolteacher, known for her immaculate garden and her tireless volunteer work at the local library. Her discovery sent a shockwave that transcended age and social circles. Martha was an elder, a cornerstone of the community. If even she wasn't safe, then no one was. Her body was found in her own meticulously tended rose garden, surrounded by the vibrant blooms she loved. The same serene pose, the same pristine white lily on her chest, the same chilling lack of struggle. But this time there was an added detail. Tucked carefully into the folds of her dress was a small, antique silver locket. It was open, but empty. Izzy felt a cold dread spread through her. "He's escalating," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chatter of responding officers. "He's not just killing, he's communicating." The locket, Ben. It's a new element. Reynolds, for once, was speechless. The professional facade crumbled slightly, revealing a flash of genuine horror. A schoolteacher. This changes everything. It's not just about youth anymore. It's about who? Dr. Vance confirmed the sedative once more, identical to the previous two. "And the locket," she said, holding it up carefully with gloved hands. "It's old, sterling silver. No fingerprints, of course, but it's clean, almost polished." Izzy immediately saw the connection. Sarah, the artist, Michael, the athlete, Martha, the teacher, all pillars of the community, representing different facets of Willow Creek's soul. And all of them, she now realized, had been present at significant, public events in the town's history. Sarah at the nature preserve trip. Michael, too. Martha, a lifelong resident, would have been at countless such events. The locket, however, was a new, personal touch. Izzy felt a sudden, sharp intuition. The empty locket wasn't just a prop. It was a clue, a symbol of something missing, something personal to the killer. That night, alone in her office, Izzy stared at the crime board, photos of the 3 victims pinned up, connected by red strings of circumstantial evidence. Sarah, Michael, Martha. The lily, the sedative, the posing, the beautiful yet horrifying stage. And now the empty locket. Suddenly, a memory resurfaced, unbidden and sharp, from her old, haunting case. A detail she had tried to bury. Her previous killer had also used symbolic objects, not as gifts, but as taunts, as pieces of a personal, twisted narrative that only he understood. He saw his victims not as individuals, but as fulfilling roles in his elaborate fantasy. She grabbed a large map of Willow Creek and began marking every significant public event from the past decade. The annual fall festival, the Historical Society's grand reopening, the high school graduation ceremonies, the town's centennial celebration. She started cross-referencing these events with the victims' known histories. It was a tedious, seemingly impossible task. But something in the killer's meticulousness, his dark artistry, told her there was a pattern, a hidden logic. Her eyes fell on a small, faded newspaper clipping from 5 years ago. Willow Creek High School celebrates centennial with community time capsule ceremony. There, in a blurry group photo of townsfolk gathered around a newly buried time capsule, were Sarah Jenkins, a high school student, and Michael Thompson, a freshman who had won an essay contest. And in the very front, beaming proudly as she led the ceremony, was Martha Gable, the head of the Historical Society. All 3 victims in one single photograph. All 3 present at the burial of a time capsule. Izzy stared at the clipping, a cold wave of realization washing over her. It wasn't just a common event. It was a time capsule, a repository of memories, of hopes, of the town's identity. And the locket, an empty vessel, a missing piece. The serpent's shadow was not just random terror. It was purposeful. It was personal. And it was intricately woven into the very fabric of Willow Creek's past. The killer was not just taking lives. They were systematically erasing or distorting the town's history, one symbolic victim at a time. The real terror, Izzy realized, was that the killer wasn't just in Willow Creek. They were Willow Creek. And they were just getting started. The discovery of the time capsule connection sent a jolt of terrifying clarity through Izzy. Reynolds, initially skeptical, could no longer deny the pattern. 3 victims, from vastly different walks of life, all present at the Willow Creek Centennial Time Capsule ceremony 5 years ago. The sedative points to someone with medical access, Izzy explained, pacing their makeshift incident room at the police station. The meticulousness, the artistic posing, the local knowledge. To someone who knows this town inside out. And the time capsule. It suggests a personal connection to Willow Creek's past, perhaps even a grievance related to it. Sheriff Carter's eyes were wide with a mix of dawning horror and understanding. The time capsule. It was my father's project, mostly. He was big on local history. And Martha Gable was the driving force behind it, collecting all the items, getting the kids involved. Exactly, Izzy pressed. Sarah represented the artistic future. Michael the athletic promise, Martha the historical heart. What if the killer feels something was stolen from them, or that the town's past, as celebrated in that time capsule, is a lie? They immediately shifted their focus. A list was compiled of everyone who attended, spoke at, or contributed to the time capsule ceremony. It was a long list, full of names familiar to Carter, and daunting to Izzy. Meanwhile, the state police began canvassing medical and veterinary clinics, pharmacies, and research facilities for anyone with suspicious access to the specific tranquilizer. The town, however, remained gripped by fear. With Martha Gable's death, no one felt safe. The media had a field day, sensationalizing every detail, turning Willow Creek into a macabre tourist attraction for true crime enthusiasts. Businesses shuttered, and a noticeable exodus of residents began. Families packing their cars and leaving their beloved homes behind. Izzy, driven by a growing sense of dread, pored over the time capsule records. The items placed inside were mundane. Letters from local children describing their hopes for the future. A high school football jersey. A collection of local artists' works. An old photo album of Willow Creek's founding families. A town charter. All representing the very essence of Willow Creek. The empty locket, found on Martha Gable, continued to haunt Izzy. She held it in her gloved hand, turning it over and over. An empty locket isn't just a prop, she muttered to herself. It's a void, a missing piece. What was supposed to be in it? Sheriff Carter, who had known Martha Gable his entire life, suddenly looked up from a stack of old historical documents. Martha used to wear a locket almost identical to this when she was younger. She told me once it held a picture of her first love, a boy named Thomas Miller. He left Willow Creek after high school, never came back. She always kept it, though, said it was a reminder of a simpler time. Izzy's heart pounded. Thomas Miller. Did he ever come back? Was he at the time capsule ceremony? A quick search of the attendance list revealed no Thomas Miller. But the name sparked another memory in Carter. Miller. The Miller family owned the old sawmill, down by Miller's Creek. They left decades ago. There was a son, younger than Thomas, a bit of a strange kid. Always kept to himself, obsessed with local history. What was his name? Arthur, I think. Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller, Izzy repeated, the name resonating. She pulled up old high school yearbooks. There he was, Arthur Miller, a thin, intense-looking boy with dark, piercing eyes, several years younger than Sarah and Michael, a contemporary of the high school students who contributed to the time capsule. He wasn't featured prominently, always on the periphery of group photos, but he was undeniably there. He graduated a year after the time capsule was buried. He's listed as a student volunteer for the Time Capsule Project, Izzy found in the Historical Society records. He helped organize artifacts, catalog items. He would have known exactly what went into that capsule. The pieces began to click into place. Arthur Miller, the quiet, history-obsessed boy, who had witnessed the time capsule ceremony, perhaps feeling marginalized or overshadowed by the town's stars. He had medical access. A quick check revealed he worked as a veterinary technician at the only animal clinic in Willow Creek. He would have access to sedatives. He knew the town's picturesque spots, and he had a personal, almost intimate connection to Martha Gable's past, through her locket. He's not just killing symbols of the town, Izzy said, a chilling realization dawning. He's killing the people he believes stole something from him, or people who represented a past he felt excluded from, a past he now wants to rewrite. They immediately dispatched officers to the veterinary clinic and to Arthur Miller's small, secluded house on the edge of town. When they arrived, the clinic was empty, Arthur having left for the day. At his house, the lights were off, the curtains drawn. As they approached the front door, a faint metallic glint caught Izzy's eye. On the doorstep, nestled among a few fallen leaves, was a small, ornate key. A key that looked remarkably similar to the one that would unlock the time capsule, which was kept under lock and key at the Historical Society. "He knows we're on to him," Izzy whispered, a cold wave washing over her. "And he's left us a message. He's going to the time capsule." The time capsule was buried deep beneath a commemorative plaque in the town square, a place of historical significance and public gathering. But it was also surrounded by dense foliage and old, winding paths. It was nearing dusk, the autumn light fading rapidly. As they raced towards the town square, the chilling truth began to emerge. Arthur Miller, the quiet, overlooked boy, had likely harbored a deep-seated resentment against Willow Creek. Perhaps he felt the time capsule, meant to represent the town's future, ignored his contributions, or highlighted the achievements of others while he remained in the shadows. Martha Gable, the keeper of history, became a target for her role in representing that past. Sarah and Michael, the faces of Willow Creek's bright future, embodied everything he felt denied. The empty locket could signify his own missing past, a feeling of being erased or forgotten. He wasn't just killing people. He was destroying the town's narrative, piece by piece, to create his own. They arrived at the town square, a sense of foreboding hanging heavy in the air. The faint glow of emergency lights from the Historical Society could be seen in the distance, indicating that state police had already responded to the key's discovery. The area around the time capsule was cordoned off. The ground was freshly disturbed, a gaping hole where the capsule once lay. Arthur Miller was there, illuminated by the harsh glare of flashlights, standing over the opened, empty time capsule. He held a small, antique axe, its blade glinting ominously. Scattered around him were the contents of the capsule, shattered and torn. Broken pieces of a high school football jersey, ripped canvases of Sarah's art, shredded letters from children. He had systematically destroyed the town's hopes and memories. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting Izzy's across the distance. There was no madness in them, only a profound, unsettling calm. "They forgot me," he stated, his voice carrying clearly in the crisp night air, devoid of emotion. "They remembered the beautiful ones, the strong ones, the ones who belonged, but not the quiet ones, not the ones who watched from the shadows." He lifted the empty locket from his pocket, the very one that had been on Martha Gable, and held it up. "My mother gave me this," he said, a flicker of pain in his eyes. It was meant to hold her picture, but I never had one. She left like everyone else, just like Willow Creek left me. He paused, then slowly, deliberately, crushed the locket under his heel. Now it's empty for everyone. The standoff was tense. Arthur, calm and resigned, made no move to escape or resist. He had finished his masterpiece. He had made his statement. He had rewritten Willow Creek's history in blood and shattered memories. Izzy, with a heavy heart, watched as officers slowly moved in, their weapons drawn, but their movements cautious. Arthur offered no resistance, simply dropping the axe and raising his hands. He was apprehended without incident, his cold, empty eyes never leaving Izzy's. In the aftermath, Willow Creek was left to grapple with its broken pieces. The time capsule was a ruin, its contents desecrated. The idyllic image of the town was forever shattered, replaced by the chilling reality of the darkness that had festered within its very heart. Arthur Miller confessed to everything, his narrative chillingly precise, devoid of remorse. He meticulously detailed how he had stalked his victims, sedated them, and posed them in locations that held personal significance to him, as a way to correct what he saw as the town's flawed memory. He felt the town had forgotten its true roots, replacing them with a superficial veneer of happiness, and he, the quiet observer, was destined to expose the emptiness beneath. Izzy left Willow Creek a few months later. The town, though slowly trying to heal, would never be the same. The whispers had become screams, and the echoes of those screams would linger in the pine forests and along the quiet streets for generations. She had brought a killer to justice, but the deeper wounds inflicted on the community would take far longer to mend. As she drove away, the rearview mirror showed the silhouette of Willow Creek, no longer a beacon of peace, but a stark reminder of the shadows that can hide in plain sight, waiting for their moment to emerge and reshape history with a terrifying, indelible hand. The quiet terrors of the heartland, she knew, were often the most profound, leaving echoes that reverberated long after the last scream had faded.